can be drawn here without shutting down a lot of speech. And you all...
Snyder v. Phelps is a landmark United States Supreme Court case that helped to define the First Amendment. In 2006, Albert Snyder's son, Lance Corporal Matthew Snyder, was killed in the line of duty in Iraq. That's when Westboro Baptist Church decided to picket Matthew Snyder's funeral, carrying signs saying distasteful claims. The Westboro Baptist Church is known for believing in controversial ideas when it comes to their religion. They believe that God punishes the United States for its acceptance of homosexuality, especially in the military. This was not the first time they picketed a funeral. The church notified the local police that they would be peacefully picketing that day. The church was compliant with the local police and set up adjacent from a public street 1,000 feet away from the funeral. Albert Snyder said he did not see the signs until after the funeral and could only see them from far away. He didn't know what the sign said until he turned on the news that night. Snyder sued Fred Phelps, the pastor of Westboro Baptist Church, and the church, claiming the intrusion upon seclusion, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and civil conspiracy. The intentional infliction of emotional distress became the most important claim that Snyder had to prove. The 4 elements to prove emotional distress was: the defendant must act intentionally or recklessly, the defendant's conduct must be extreme and outrageous, and the conduct must be the cause of severe emotional distress. Westboro Baptist Church argued that their speech and protest was protected under the Free Speech Clause of the First Amendment of the Constitution. One issue the jury faced was if the church's signs and speech while picketing related to matters of public concern. If so, were they entitled to greater protection under the First Amendment? The District of Maryland Court found that the First Amendment did not protect the Westboro Baptist Church's hate speech and awarded Albert Snyder a total of $10.9 million, which was later lowered to $5 million. The church then repealed the judgment, which brought the case to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, later finding that the First Amendment did not protect the church's protest and reversed the judge's order of $5 million. In the Supreme Court, a lot of the decision fell on if the church was speaking on matters of public concern as opposed to matters of purely private significance. The court said that deciding whether speech is of public or private concern requires us to examine the content, form, and context of that speech. Meaning if the speech was an attack on the Snyders, it wouldn't be protected under the Constitution of the First Amendment. The court stated how distasteful the picket signs were and wholeheartedly did not agree with the sign's message. The court still found that even though the message was felt as less than what was socially acceptable, it still awarded protection under the First Amendment. The speech was a matter of public concern, even though Snyder argued it was a private concern and a personal attack to his family. The Supreme Court said the most important factor was what was said, where it was said, and how it was meant to be said. The court overall found most of the picket signs addressed overall public issues regarding the U.S. Army and homosexuality. The church also picketed on public land 1,000 feet away from the Snyders. The church had no relationship to the Snyder family that would suggest that the protest was intended as a private speech or a personal attack. On October 6, 2010, the Supreme Court found 8-1 that Phelps and the Westboro Baptist Church was speaking on public concern on public property, meaning they were entitled to protection under the First Amendment. The judge that dissented and believed that it was a private concern was Justice Alito. He argued that the Supreme Court recognized many times before that words can inflict injury, saying that the Westboro Baptist Church brutally attacked Matthew Snyder and his family and was almost certain to inflict injury. Alito based his claims off of the court case, Chaplinsky v. New Hampshire. The Supreme Court found that the First Amendment does not shield utterances that form no essential part of any exposition of ideas, and are of such slight social value as a step to truth that any benefit that may be derived from this is clearly outweighed by the social interest in order and morality. In 2011, after the case was over, Justice Ginsburg said Justice Alito's dissent was heartfelt and said that it underscored the incomparable distress suffered by the Snyder family. Ginsburg also said, although no member of court joined him, his opinion aligned with the views of many court watchers, including one of the nation's newest and retired Justice Stevens, who recently told the Federal Bar Council he would have joined Alito's powerful dissent. The importance of this case was it gives First Amendment rights to everyone, not just ethical ideals. Though the majority was disdained by the messages the Westboro Baptist Church put out in the world, as long as it wasn't an individual attack, they were legally free to do so. though many still argue to this day of whether the Supreme Court made the right decision and still argue that it was, in fact, an attack on the Snyder family.